Hi, and welcome to this interview with Love Addicts. We're interviewing Dr. Cortney Warren today, and Dr. Cortney is a psychologist, author, and speaker, and her expertise includes relationships, self-deception, and body image. So, first of all, welcome, Cortney. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to interview and talk about all these things with you.
Thank you for having me, Noor. I'm really, really glad to be talking with you today.
Awesome. So, Dr. Courtney, I think what would be amazing for today is that I have some questions prepared for you to cover a lot of different topics when it comes to relationships, but even
Mm,
deeper. I think a lot of the root causes of relationship problems have to do with insecurity and
mm,
beliefs about ourselves. And I think
mm.
that it would be really important to cover that. So perhaps we can start by talking about insecurity. Like, how do you define insecurity? What's insecurity to you?
Insecurity is any of those vulnerable parts of yourself that lead you to doubt who you are or your basic fundamental value as a person. It's those aspects that you're not very confident in, where you don't feel grounded and safe and secure in your own skin, where you're prone to lie to yourself. You're also prone to doubt who you are and your authentic nature in the world. And being insecure is a very normal, natural part of being human. We all have insecurities. We're all going to have moments in time or aspects of ourselves where we just doubt ourselves. We feel uncomfortable. We feel unsure of ourselves. But confronting those insecurities is so critical to our own development, because the more empowered you feel, the more secure you feel in yourself, the better able you're going to be to maneuver and navigate difficulties as they emerge.
Right. That's really cool. That's a really good way to look at it, that insecurity is a normal thing that a lot of people go through. Oftentimes we have this stigma about ourselves that, oh, we feel insecure. And so that must
Mm,
mean that something is wrong with us. But knowing that it's normal
mm.
and what's important is to confront it, as you said, is could really change how we see it. And so one thing I often wonder about insecurity is, why do we feel insecure with some people, but not with others? Like, we may
Mm.
feel insecure with someone, but with someone else we feel okay and confident. Is there any reason for that?
Absolutely. And it's so much about what we're feeding off of in our environment. So when you're on your own in your life, you may feel pretty grounded and pretty sure of yourself. But as we maneuver around the world and meet people and get into different experiences, we are very likely to be triggered in certain ways, which really means we're stimulated by our outside environment or our situation, such that it affects our internal experience.
Hmm.
And if you're in a situation that's triggering that insecure aspect of yourself, that part of you that you doubt, it is much more likely that you're going to feel insecure in that situation in your life. Whereas if you're with someone who makes you feel really confident and good about yourself, then you're going to feel very grounded and less insecure. So it actually is an interaction when our insecurities emerge. There's also probably a core level of security that each of us bring to the world, right? And so the more kind of trait level security you can have with yourself, the more general security you can have with yourself, the less likely you are to be triggered by any situation that you may encounter. But even the most secure people are going to be in situations that make them doubt themselves sometimes. And so it's an interplay of how much you've developed that strength, that psychological strength within yourself, and also how that strength does or does not get activated when you encounter situations in your life.
Right. So there is like a core uh, secure level or core level of security that each person have and has, and that level could affect how we interact with other people. But really, it's also about the situation. It can bring out, it could bring about triggers inside of us that make us feel
Absolutely.
insecure. And so if we're feeling like if there's some level of insecurity inside of us, then a situation can bring that out. And that's why it feels different with different people or different
Yes.
situations. And so I feel
Yes,
like it's a lot tied to beliefs we have about ourselves. Do you think so?
absolutely. I think when you think about humans from a developmental perspective, from early childhood, we're all raised in a cultural and familial context. And from an early age, we start learning, we start observing, we start making conclusions about ourselves and other people and the world around us. And
Right.
although that's a very unconscious process, we don't think about it when we're 2 or 3 or 5, perhaps. We bring those beliefs with us everywhere we go in the world as we age.
Hmm.
And so if you internalized from a young age any beliefs that incorrectly conclude that you're not valuable, that something's wrong with you, that you're not good enough, or that you're not good at something, you actually will bring those learnings as insecurities into your adult relationships. And so when we think psychologically about having healthy relationships through adulthood, from childhood through, our romantic relationships, our friendships, our family relationships as we age,
Hmm.
we talk a lot about attachment and secure attachment versus insecure attachment, because it's really a reflection at some level of the beliefs that you developed about yourself and other people from long ago that in turn affect your experiences as an adult.
Right. So the core of insecurity is often these beliefs we have about ourselves. And that also gets me thinking that if we have certain beliefs about ourselves, because we can have all kinds of different beliefs, and those beliefs can
Mhm.
be true and they can be false.
Mhm.
And a lot of the times when it comes to insecurity, we have these beliefs that we might not be worthy or we don't deserve love. And oftentimes those beliefs are false. So it gets me thinking that then we're lying to ourselves quite a lot. We're convincing ourselves that we are less. Like, what do you think of that? How does that happen? How do we lie to ourselves and convince ourselves of these beliefs?
Oh, it's so true. We lie to ourselves all the time, actually. Self-deception is a very natural part of the human condition. And we do it usually because we've learned something early on that we just accepted as truth
Hmm.
without critically thinking about whether it's true or not, or because we're trying to protect ourselves from information that would really hurt us. It's an ego-based defense mechanism. It keeps us from acknowledging something that's really painful. So when you think about insecurities and lying, let me give us an example to kind of put this into context. Let's say you grew up in a household where your parents didn't really get along all that well and fought a lot.
Hmm.
You may have incorrectly learned that love is aggressive, or love is violent,
Mhm.
or love isn't safe. Now, as an adult, when we think about those statements, most of us can analyze them and say, well, that's really not true. But if you learned that in childhood and believed it to be true when you get into romantic relationships later in life, you may believe that conflict or even violence with your new romantic mate is a reflection of love, that that's how relationships should be. And so, in that way, the self deceptive tendencies actually emerge in your thinking patterns, in your choices, in your emotional reactions to people, all through the course of your life until you pause long enough to say, is this really true? Is this really something I believe? Is this something that's helpful and healthy for me? Or is this something that I internalized that my parents would never have wanted me to know or believe or think, but I am manifesting it in my current life in ways that are really harmful to me? And that's really the journey of confronting self-deception as we age in our relationships.
Right. That's beautifully said. It really sounds like we're just given a belief based on how we've experienced life, and we've not seen an alternative to it. And so
Mm.
that's really the only way we knew how it is. And the only way to grow is to sit down with ourselves and really think about it and challenge it. Yeah.
It's a looking in the mirror journey, this life.
Yeah.
It's being strong enough, going back to our insecurity comments, strong enough to tolerate seeing that you're wrong,
Mm.
that you may have made some faulty beliefs and conclusions, particularly based on where you were most harmed as a young child, that are continuing to promote dysfunction in your relationships in ways that you can't see. But as you see them, you now become empowered to shift them and make different choices for yourself that are much more helpful and healthy for you and for all of the people in your life.
Yeah. That's an amazing way to look at it. And, one thing I think about, maybe it would be helpful to um, make this a little bit more concrete for someone
Mm-hmm.
who is thinking about self-deception and how they lie to themselves or how we lie to ourselves, because we all do it, right?
All of us.
What are common ways that we lie to ourselves? Like, what are some common situations or common beliefs that, are present both in the average population, but also specifically in someone with anxious attachment?
Mm. Well, there are so many documented ways that we can think about lying that psychologists have been really good at describing. So one of the most common ways is denial. That's
Mm.
just blatantly refusing to believe the truth. Even if you have a ton of evidence to suggest that you're wrong, you say, nope, 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 I'm not like that. They're not like that. My mother or father is not like that. It's just a blatant disregard for information.
Mm.
We as humans are excellent at denial. And oftentimes it emerges because we don't want to consider the possibility that whatever someone else is saying or thinking about us is true. But once we admit it, we now have the power to change and to shift it. So if someone gives you feedback and says something that's ouch, it's like an ouch, you're bossy, you're really judgmental, you are disrespectful in the way that you're speaking to me right now. Denial is saying, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. That's a very common way we lie. Projection is when you can't see something in yourself, but you see it in everybody around you. So you might say, oh, I'm not judgmental. You're the one who's judgmental. You're the one who's fighting all the time. You're the one who's disrespectful, right? It's this ability that we have to deflect from ourselves and put it onto somebody else. From a cognitive perspective, the cognitive psychologists, we often look at how our thinking is irrational. So this would be things like rationalization, where you find yourself in a situation in life where you've acted in a way that really isn't okay with you. You don't feel good about it. So to feel better, you give me a rational explanation for why you did it, because that somehow lessens the blow. So you'd say, well, I wouldn't have yelled at you if you weren't so late to dinner. I wouldn't have yelled at you if you hadn't acted that way. It's a deflection of, I actually did act in a really disrespectful way, and I apologize, because that takes so much more it takes so much more strength to see that truth. Emotional reasoning is another one that people use a lot, where you have emotional reaction to something. You feel angry, you feel sad, and you think that it means something in your current environment must be causing it. Like, I'm so mad, so it must be that you did something really bad. When in fact, oftentimes our strong emotional reactions are because we're being triggered by something from our past that has very little to do with the current situation we're in. Culturally, also, as we mentioned a bit earlier, lying comes from accepting and internalizing norms and social values without critically thinking about them. So if you were raised in a really religious household, or you were raised in a cultural context that was racist or sexist or classist, just believing that those things are true without actually asking yourself, what evidence do I have that this is true? Or do I actually agree with this? And so those are some really common ways that we lie, and that we bring our lies forward and pass them on to other people, because when you're in denial, when you're rationalizing, when you have accepted a cultural norm, you believe that it's true. And so you communicate that to everyone around you, your children, your family members, your romantic partners, whether it's objectively true or not.
Hmm. Right. And it becomes a much bigger thing than perhaps what it initially was. So would you say that it's a lot more costly then to lie to
Oh,
ourselves using one of these tactics than to just be honest about what's going on and maybe sit down and really think about it?
it's so costly. It's costly to ourselves as individuals. It's costly to our relationships with other people. It's costly to our society and our cultural context, because you can't change something you can't admit. I can't convince you to do anything differently until you can first accept the truth, until
Right.
you can see it, until you can sink your teeth into it, right? So I'll give you an example from my own life that was very apparent. I struggled a lot in my romantic relationships when I was a teenager, especially into my early 20s. And one of the core beliefs that I had internalized as a child was that I was somehow broken and flawed, and that somehow I was never going to be able to get someone to stay. People would always leave me. And that was because I grew up in a household where my parents were divorced and pretty much unavailable. And so when I started dating, everyone I started to get close to triggered those core beliefs in me. And I would say to them, well, if you did this differently, if you called me more, if you texted me more, if you made more of an effort, then I would feel better. Then I would be able to attach to you. Then I would want to stay in this. When the truth was, I was lying to myself and lying to them. There was actually nothing that they could do to make me feel better, because the reason I didn't feel safe had almost nothing to do with them.
Hmm.
It had to do with the fact that I didn't believe anyone would ever stay or love me enough to want to connect with me. And so, in order to have a healthy relationship through adulthood, I had to work on my own self-deceptive tendencies and learn how to communicate truth to my romantic partner so that we actually had something real to work with.
Right. And so how can one do that? Like, how could you detect how you are lying to yourself or when you are lying to yourself before developing the honesty, which I'll actually ask you about in a second as well.
Yeah, it is so hard. You know, what's so funny is if I ask you, do you notice self-deception in other
Yeah.
people? You'll see it immediately. We're like, oh, my friend's lying to themselves about this. This one's in a terrible relationship and they just can't admit it. This one is in a job that they hate, but they're not willing to do anything differently. It's like you see it everywhere. But seeing self-deception in ourselves is so difficult because it's painful, right? You're going to be confronted with really emotionally painful realities about who you are today, about your upbringing, about traumas you've experienced, about painful experiences that you've had with partners in the past. And so we're so protected against it. That said, obviously you can hear from my voice that I think this is profoundly important to all of us, because it's the mechanism through which you will empower yourself. So the best way to start, the easiest way for people to start, is when you have a strong emotional reaction to something, you're immediately angry or immediately sad or immediately just absolutely flooded with some affect, pause. And before you tell me about the situation or the other person or what you believe to be causing your emotion, refocus to, what does my reaction say about me? What is this situation touching on that I don't want to admit about myself? Where am I insecure? And how is this situation bringing up that insecurity in me? Because really the start of tackling self-deception is self-awareness. It starts with having to become an observer of yourself, not in a judgmental way, not in a critical way, not beating yourself up and leaning into shame or embarrassment, but in a very objective way. If you were your best friend watching you, what could you learn about yourself? And the more you can take that supportive observer role, the more you'll be able to see where you're lying to yourself. And as you see it, the beautiful thing is that now you have the opportunity to change. So, for example, you can start challenging the deceptive thoughts. You can start building your self-esteem. You can start taking responsibility for your choices and making choices that are going to be really hard because they're going to require you to do things differently, but that ultimately will give you profound freedom in yourself and in your relationships moving forward.
Right. Sounds a lot like awareness is really half the battle. Like if we could just pause and just notice what we're doing, then we already have a foundation to work on this and to change this pattern of lying to ourselves.
It really starts with awareness. It really does. It really requires that you consider where you're wrong, where you're lying, where you're bringing up baggage into your current life that has nothing to do with your current life,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's inside of you.
Right. And one thing that comes to mind when we talk about awareness is, and I noticed this from myself, I noticed this from the people within the Love Addicts community, is a lot of times when we are trying to be aware, or when we are in a situation that requires us to be aware, emotions come in the way, and we might feel very anxious, or we might feel like we're in crisis mode, we're in panic mode. And so how do these emotions affect our thinking? And how can we overcome that and self-awareness in these difficult moments?
When we're really emotionally activated, when we have that soda pop head moment where we're just in it, we tend not to think clearly at all. We tend to be overtaken with an emotional reactivity in our minds, in our bodies. And so, generally speaking, you're not thinking very clearly. And if you struggle with that, anyone listening, or when I struggle with that, my biggest recommendation is actually to practice distress tolerance, which is learning to sit with your emotion and knowing that over time it will diminish. Pause and be with the emotion, and wait to make any rational decisions or have a big argument or have any interaction with other humans until your affect settles to the degree that you can think clearly and make a more deliberate choice about how you want to speak and how you want to respond.
Yeah, I love that. And I could really relate to it because one of my most valued skills that I've acquired on my journey to developing security in myself is having this ability to just let go. It's like you're pulling a rope and you're in a tug of war, right? You're pulling the rope and it's really strong. And then having the realization that you could just let go of the rope and decide not to deal with it right now. Take some space, calm down, and then come back to it later. It's a game changer, and it really could save you a lot of pain in relationships.
We also tend to make really bad behavioral choices when we're really activated.
Yeah.
So, for example, for some of your community who maybe has gone through a really bad breakup, and you have a lot of emotional reactivity around your ex, right? You're thinking about them. You want to reach out to them. You see a post from them online. They're at a party. They look happy. They're dating that person they cheated on you with. What we want to do is usually harmful. We want to reach out to them. We might want to scream at them, send some snarky email. We might want to go grab a bottle of wine and just guzzle the whole thing. Self-harming behaviors. Go distract yourself by spending money shopping with stuff that you don't ever want or need, right? And those impulsive behaviors that oftentimes we engage in when we're really emotionally upset, the problem with them is that in the long run, they usually lead to really negative consequences. In the short term, being impulsive actually gives you a little bit of relief. you feel a little emotionally better just doing something, anything, because sitting with the feeling is so uncomfortable. But if you can learn to sit with the feeling and let go of the rope, as you said, let go of the things that you can't control and just be, and pause and wait until you can think through your choices and the consequences of choices, you're much less likely to do those harmful behaviors. You're not going to reach out to your ex. You're not going to stalk them online. You're not going to go on a shopping spree, and you're probably not going to drink the bottle of wine. You're going to say, okay, ouch, that really hurt. I really, really don't like the situation I'm in right now. And now what? What am I going to choose to do that's helpful for me and not harmful for me?
Right. It's a lot about developing the ability as well to think long term and not just like satisfy our short term impulses, which is really important. And
Yes.
so it leads me to one final question on this topic before we move on to perhaps love addiction and breakups. And that is honesty. I think honesty in the end is the core solution to self-deception, and honesty with ourselves, honesty with other people as well. And so how can we develop this honesty? Because sometimes it sounds hard to do. I know this sounds cheesy, but it sounds hard to be honest sometimes with ourselves and with other people. So how can one develop this honesty?
I think it's probably harder to be with ourselves, honest with ourselves than with other people. And I would actually argue that the journey of life is for us to become as honest with ourselves as possible. That self-honesty is the key to our freedom and to our life choices. Because the more honest with ourselves we are, the more we can make deliberate lifestyle choices that lead us to the most fulfilling lives for us, which is going to be different for every human. What you need to do in this life is different than what someone else needs to do in this life. To look back on your life and say, I lived the best life I could for me.
Right.
Honesty with other people, although I still think is very laudable and a virtue, is more complicated. But you definitely can't be honest with other people if you're not first honest with yourself. So the real crux of the journey is with yourself, is with developing that in yourself. I think the first thing that we have to have in order to be honest is a strong enough sense of self-esteem that we can tolerate adversity. So what I mean by that is the goal is eventually, if you were in my therapy office or if I were working with you, would be that you could tolerate looking at any difficult experience you've had in your life, the most painful breakup, the most painful relationship dynamics, the most traumatic experiences, and look back on them with almost no emotional reaction or attachment at all. Because when you can do that, you now have taken all of your power back and you can emerge into your present life with pure authenticity, being exactly who you are, who you aspire to be, who you want to be, who's living a life based on the values that you hold most dear, and have the ultimate power to choose your life choices, not from a reactive standpoint and not from an insecurity standpoint, but from a place of strength. We always want to make choices from a place of strength, not weakness. And so holding that value, the belief that being honest with yourself is the key to your empowerment, is critical to tolerating the difficulty that's going to come as you start to acknowledge the truth and really building that self-esteem, building an internal knowledge that you can handle it, that you're going to be okay, whatever it is essential to being able to be honest with yourself and other people.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of being okay with whatever happens, that you can handle it. And I love the idea that honesty and honesty with yourself specifically is at the root of that as well. And at the same time, it's the solution to it. So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to think about. Yeah.
It's worth it. And it gets easier because as you build your self-esteem, it's not as hard to admit the truth to yourself, right? It's this magical thing where maybe you start out in denial about something. You say, no, 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 I'm not like that. And then as you build your self-esteem, you say, oh, I kind of am like that. Oh, I don't really like that about myself. Oh, I better change that about myself. And then you start practicing. And as you practice, when you encounter difficult things about yourself in the future, it doesn't hurt as much. You say, wow, yeah, I struggle with that. I've been working on that for years. Apparently, I still need to work on it some more because I haven't mastered it yet. And you end up developing a way of being authentic where you can really acknowledge painful truths and they don't break you, because you just know that it's the next phase of your personal evolution. It's the next thing for you to work through. And that's really as good as it's going to get as humans. We're never going to be done. We're never going to have, this perfect, authentic, self-actualized self who's on the mountaintop and doesn't have any reactions or insecurities anymore. But we are going to come to a place, hopefully, as we work on it over time, where we evolve and we grow and we shift, and it's not as hard.
Yeah. Yeah. We develop the resilience to be able to face it, and the strength.
No question.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And the journey leads us to love addiction.
Yes.
So love addiction is also one of the things that you're an expert at. And, Love Addicts is the name of our community. And love addiction is something that I am also very passionate about. So I feel like it's something that perhaps tends to be maybe ignored or underrated. But it's something that a lot of us go through. And a lot of us, a lot of the time, confuse love addiction with love. And so I think over the next few questions, maybe we can get some clarity on that. So to start with, how do you define love addiction? What is love addiction to you?
I define love addiction as a dysfunctional pattern of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in your romantic relationships that focus on your mate. And it's based in this idea that love in your brain stimulates the dopaminergic reward center. It's this very primal, survival-based part of us that actually needs love, that needs interpersonal relationships and connections to survive, literally to survive. That we are programmed from birth to need to connect to people, to need touch, to need affection, to need caretaking, or we literally will not make it. And even if we survive physically, we will not thrive emotionally if we don't have our love needs met. And so from a love addiction perspective, it can look different in different people. It may be that you fall madly in love with one person, and it's a really unhealthy relationship that you can't leave because you feel addicted to this person, but it's really not a good situation for you. And it's bringing out a lot of your insecurities in ways that are harmful. It could be that you are sort of an addictive, high-seeking human where you love the high of falling in love and then very quickly tap out because it doesn't hold your attention or your energy anymore. And so it's more about chasing the high with different people and not being able to tolerate sort of the attachment phase that occurs later in relationships oftentimes that isn't as exciting, but it's more honest and it's more real. Or it could be that you fell in love with someone and then you broke up. And because you are biologically programmed to become addicted to someone when you fall in love, now that you've broken up, you still feel addicted to them, but you're no longer together. And so you're almost in this addictive non-relationship relationship where the person isn't even in your life anymore, but you can't stop thinking about them. You can't stop craving them. You still want them, and your life is falling apart. And that's really what my latest book is about. What it was written for people who just can't seem to get over a former lover.
Right. Yeah, well, could you then maybe expand on that a little bit? Like, why does someone get addicted to an ex? And what can they do about it?
Mm-hmm. You know, from an evolutionary perspective, we're really designed to become addicted to our mate. You're not going to fall in love with everyone you meet. You're not going to fall in love with everyone you date. And even breakups aren't always going to be tremendously painful. But almost all of us are likely to fall madly in love with someone in our lives. And it is designed biologically for you to become addicted to them so that you will touch them, want to be with them, have sex with them, get pregnant, procreate long enough to ensure that the mother and the child actually survive, right? It's a biologically driven need, really, the addictive nature of love. So if you fall in love and you've had that honeymoon phase where it's euphoric, you think about them constantly, you crave them, you want to be with them, you want to touch them, and then you break up, it is very difficult for people to detach from that addict mentality that their ex is their stimulus. And so the journey of the breakup oftentimes looks like you're an exaholic. It looks like you're still addicted to something that isn't in your life. You're thinking about them. You're ruminating about them. What are they doing? Who are they with? You want to touch them. You want to reach out to them. You want answers. Maybe you're furious. You want to scream at them. You want to tell them all the reasons that they're a horrible person. And it's this hyper fixation on the former lover that looks really addictive, that is miserable because it will make you emotionally tank. It's associated with depressive symptoms and symptoms of anxiety, acting in ways that are ultimately harmful for you, like stalking them or searching for them online, using information about them just to kind of get by. And what it ends up doing is keeping you focused on someone who isn't even in your life anymore. And so from that addictive framework, what I really want people to know is that they're not crazy, because you're biologically and emotionally designed to attach to someone. And if it then didn't work out, it makes sense why you're struggling so much. The good news is that there are a host of psychologically supported, researched tools that you can use to help yourself get over them and let go of them. As you said, let go of the rope, let go of your ex, so that they no longer have so much power in your life, so that you can stop thinking about them and ruminating about them and shift the lies you may tell yourself about them and your relationship with them to enjoy your life again, whether they're in it or not in it. Mm-hmm. And that's really the core of the journey of getting over a bad breakup.
Right. And so what are some of those tools? Would you mind like sharing some tools that, someone who's struggling with getting over an addiction to an ex could use to feel better about it and to let them go?
Yes. I mean, there are so many things that people can learn to do. I usually describe the journey in kind of three parts. And I liken it to coming into the ER with a cut, like as if you got a stab wound right in your arm, where immediately when you come into an emergency room or in my office, the first thing I'm going to try to do is help you stop the bleeding. Think of your symptoms as the bleeding, right? Right when you're going through the breakup and you just feel absolutely a mess. I'm going to focus on skills that will help you tolerate the symptoms you're having today and stop them. Those are things like self-care, focusing on eating and sleeping and building social support outside of your ex. Radical acceptance is a cognitive technique where instead of getting stuck in the rumination and the obsessive thinking about them, you try to focus on the fact that right now you're actually broken up. And whether there's anything to be said in the future or anything to change in the past is no longer relevant. That staying focused on the fact that today you're not together and you need to live and make choices in that reality is necessary to your healing.
Hmm.
It includes managing your behaviors. So really learning to choose your responses in a non-reactive way, practicing distress tolerance, which we talked about earlier, learning to sit with your emotions and not act on them without thinking about the consequences of them. So we first get you some tools so that you're going to feel a little bit better and get a little bit of that ego strength back, that self-esteem.
Mhm.
The next phase is really more about understanding how you got here in the first place. What conclusions you have made about yourself, your ex, and romantic relationships from your core beliefs developed in early childhood to the lies you're telling yourself about your ex. For example, many people who go through a bad breakup believe that their ex will change, or that they're never going to get over them, or that there's no one else in the world who could possibly want them again, or that if they loved each other enough, then their relationship is bound to work. All of those thoughts are really common, but they're actually completely untrue. And so learning to work with your thought patterns and shifting untrue and unhelpful thoughts to make them more accurate, like, I'm really struggling with this breakup right now, but I was happy before I met my ex, and I know that I can be happy again if I make choices that are healthy for me. There are millions of people in the world, and there's a good chance that if I'm open to it, I can meet another person that I could really fall for. There are things that I can do to help myself manage my reactions to this. And there may even be people who are healthier for me than my ex was, right? So learning to shift your thinking to be more helpful and more accurate, and delving into some of those core beliefs. Where are your insecurities? What led you to date this person or people like this? And how can you work with those core beliefs to shift them so that your worldview has a much more adaptive view of romantic love and relationships? And then the last phase of treatment, after we've stopped the bleeding and now we've figured out how you got cut, right? What kind of knife was it, and where did it happen, and when did it happen, and has it happened before? Now we get into the healing, really the what's next for your life. What do you want now? You're always going to have a scar. You're always going to have the remnants of this relationship, but you can learn to see your relationship differently, and your ex differently, and yourself differently. So when you look at your scar, it doesn't hurt anymore. You can learn to see it as a small part of your much larger life journey. This journey is long in life, from birth to death. And so rediscovering who you are, what your core values are, what kind of person you want to be in this life, what kind of relationships are most fulfilling to you, and what you need in a romantic partner. It also includes forgiveness, forgiving yourself for ways that you were unideal, forgiving your parents, perhaps, or your cultural upbringing, forgiving your ex. It includes learning to really detach from the past pain and focusing on who you are now and what you want for your life moving forward. And so those are kind of the steps and some of the main skills that you can use and learn to really help yourself move forward.
Yeah, I really love that. I think that's such a valuable tool, such a valuable set of steps that anybody can apply if they're going through a breakup. And it sounds like this is something that, someone can follow and really see like a better future, better relationships, better security in themselves if they follow these three things. So thank you so much
Mhm.
for sharing that. It's very valuable.
Yes. Yes, I sure hope so. We're all going to go through it. I have been through it.
Yeah.
The research suggests that pretty much every human is going to go through a really bad breakup. Even if you don't struggle with love addiction in general in your life, you may fall madly in love and then all of a sudden realize, wow, I didn't even know I struggled with this.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean anything wrong with you. It means that you fell madly in love with someone and it's not working. And you're having a whole host of symptoms because of it that you can work through and actually use it to make yourself stronger.
Yeah, I love that as well. Knowing that we're not crazy, knowing that this is something that is human, is so important
Mhm.
to the process of healing.
Mm,
One question that also comes to mind when we think about all of these symptoms of love addiction, and we talked a lot about breakups and healing from an addiction to an ex.
mhm,
Now, I think of two situations that I see quite often. The first one is getting into a new relationship, and perhaps
mm,
we've had some experiences in the past that make us feel a little bit less able to be vulnerable with the person. So when we're in this new relationship, we might feel anxious, we might like be very aware of the way we act, of how we text them, of what we say to them, of all of these things. And so that can cause a lot of distress to us. And then the second situation I think of, which is we've had a relationship, we broke up, and then we got back together. And then the
mhm,
dynamic of when we've gotten back together is a little bit different. There seems to be more anxiety, more distress, and
mm,
those symptoms of love addiction in both situations seem to be, seem to be quite strong. So how can someone
mhm,
deal with love addiction in those situations? And what can someone do about it?
mhm. Taking your first example where you've broken up, you realize that you've struggled with love addiction and you're trying to date again, and you're having hypervigilance, is some of what you described, where you're aware that you're probably not as trusting of people, or that you're really afraid of getting close again, that you might be bringing baggage from your love addicted past into this new relationship, and you notice it coming out even in your text messages, in the way that you talk to them, in kind of your vigilant awareness of who they are or what they're doing, that bothers you, that's uncomfortable, that is difficult. The first thing I would say is bravo to you for even noticing, because again, going back to this self-awareness, it's always going to start with you. And if you notice that you are bringing some of those insecurities into your next dating relationship, know that that is totally normal. But you are the one who has to work through those. Because if they sort of seep into this next relationship, they're probably going to be damaging. And so starting with acknowledging your feelings, your experiences, your thoughts, like, wow, I notice I'm really noticing and looking at every single word I'm texting this person. And I'm doing that because I'm uncomfortable. I'm insecure. I'm not sure whether I really can get close again. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to enter into another relationship that's going to be anything like how my last one ended. Wonderful. Bravo to you. Pause there. Now is the time again to rebuild that self-esteem. Find a good therapist to work through some of those issues. Journal about your experiences. Talk to your friends. Get social support. Use tools so that you can practice not letting those insecurities seep into your new relationship. And hopefully, if you're entering into a new relationship that's really going to be healthy for you, there will be a mechanism for you to actually talk to your new partner about it. Now, that's kind of scary and kind of vulnerable, and it really depends on kind of the stage of relationship you're in, right? When you're on a first date or a second date, you might not want to delve into the deep. I had my heart broken with my last relationship, and I'm feeling really scared getting close to you, because maybe you're not ready for that yet as the new dating person. But eventually, you want to be in romantic relationships where it's okay for you to be insecure and vulnerable. Because the best of us, the best of our relationships with people, the way that we actually connect in a meaningful way with humans is through our vulnerabilities, is by being able to authentically be yourself and say, I really struggle with this, or I really had this horrible breakup with my last relationship, or a really dysfunctional relationship, and I am trying to do it differently with you. And there are going to be times where I trip and fall on my face, and I might hurt myself. I might hurt you. I might do something that I really regret. And the hope is that I can build a relationship with you that's strong enough and respectful enough and loving enough that we can help ourselves and each other through it. Right? And that's the beauty of developing a really deep, meaningful romantic relationship with someone, that you actually show your warts and all the unattractive aspects of yourself, and they love you through it, because relationships are a choice. And if you choose to be with someone, it means that at some level, you're going to have to work through the unideal aspects of them with them. And although that might be really scary, it's also the most fulfilling part of being close to another person. So that's my 2 cents on the first one. And the second situation that you brought up is also related to developing closeness with someone, where if you've broken up with someone and then you get back together, I talk a lot about this with people, because especially if you're a love addict and you were in love with someone, there's probably a deep internal part of you that wants to reconnect, because you at some point really cared about this person, or maybe you still do. The truth is that it's possible for you to break up and then get back together with someone and have it work. It's absolutely possible. But for it to work, it means that you and your partner both have to be willing to do something differently. Either you had to address whatever you were doing to contribute to the dysfunction, whatever they were doing to the dysfunction, or the two of you not working together. Otherwise, what's likely to happen is you're going to get back together and you're going to have exactly the same problems that you had before. So if you are re-entering with an old flame, I strongly recommend that right off the bat, you have that conversation. Let's remember why this didn't work the last time. What are each of us going to do differently so that at least we have new problems and don't recreate the same old problems? Because you're going to have to both be willing to do things differently in order for it to work. There's a reason you broke up the first time. And so don't forget what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important as well, to remember why someone broke up with their partner, and then address that in a future relationship if they ever want to get back with them. And on the topic of getting back with an ex, I feel that this is, quite a common thought, and even an impulse that really pulls us to act on. And that is, we sometimes tend to confuse being addicted to someone, being addicted to an ex, with thinking that they are the one for us, thinking that this is true love, thinking that this person is someone that we really love and we've never loved anyone like them before. And in reality, it might just be that we're addicted to them. So how can we differentiate between that? How can we know, well, this person is someone I really love, I might have made mistakes and so we broke up, or they might have made a mistake and we broke up, versus it's not really someone I'm compatible with. It's not really someone that I work well with, yet I'm addicted to them. And I think that they are the person for me.
Oh, it's such a great question and such a difficult answer. Because one of the most beautiful experiences we can have as humans is falling in love. Right? I don't want to suggest that falling in love is a bad thing. It's euphoric. It's probably one of the best natural highs we're ever going to have in our life. And that's a wonderful, magical thing. What I don't want people to do is confuse the euphoria that's associated with romantic love with what makes a meaningful romantic attachment over time. Having a healthy romantic relationship means that you're honest with yourself and your mate about who you really are, about those vulnerable, unattractive, pained aspects of ourselves. And when we're in the throes of romantic love, that high euphoric thing, generally you're only going to see the positives. You're going to put your best foot forward. So are they. And you're going to make conclusions about them that they are this ideal, perfect person that you can't live without. And you want to plan your whole life together because now two become one and you're complete, which is really not true.
Right.
So on the one hand, I want everyone to embrace that magic of falling in love because it's amazing. On the other hand, in order to develop a healthy romantic relationship, you have to be willing to see your partner and yourself from a realistic, down-to-earth perspective and ask yourself whether you're a good fit based on your values, based on what each of you want in life, what lifestyle you want to live, what matters to you. Because at the end of the day, if you fall in love with someone who's really fundamentally incompatible with you in some way, one of you wants children and the other doesn't. One of you wants to live in the Middle East and the other one wants to live in the United States. One of you is from a religious background that really matters to them, and the other one is from a different religious background. It may be that you really love each other, but you're going to really struggle having a successful relationship. And you're going to have to figure that out if your relationship is ever going to work, whether you're in love or not.
And it feels like that's a part of relationships as well. We have to just accept that when we get into relationships and into dating, there might be a chance that we might love someone and yet we're not compatible. And so knowing that and accepting it, I think, is really important whenever we get into relationships as well.
Love is not enough to make a relationship work. I know that that's a belief we all want to hold dear, and it's a lie. Love for many people is a necessary but insufficient condition of having a romantic relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts on what can one do to create meaningful relationships for the future?
My massive recommendation to anyone listening is to be yourself. To be as authentically yourself as possible. Because oftentimes when we start dating, we think about what is the other person going to like. We want to put our best foot forward and only show the good aspects of ourselves and sort of impress people. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that you want to connect with people who really like you as you are, for who you are. And so only moving forward with your best foot forward may make someone really like you, but it doesn't mean they're going to be a good fit. And so I would say the more you can focus on who you are and what you really care about and showing up as the best version of yourself, the more likely you are to find someone else that you really like, who not only you're going to fall in love with, but you're going to like, that you're going to think is a good human being, that has a good value system, that lives a lifestyle that really you enjoy and want. And if you can fall in love with someone who you also really like and is very compatible with you as a partner, that's the best situation for romantic love.
Yeah, I love that. It's really based on authenticity then. And it's really based on showing ourselves to someone and really offering connection rather than trying to show a version of us that we think might bring us connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So Dr. Cortney, we're almost at the hour mark. That was really, really cool. Thank you so much for the interview. I really learned a lot from you. I hope that you guys did as well. Before we end this, Dr. Cortney, do you want to maybe share a little bit about how people can reach out to you, perhaps a little bit about your new book as well, so that, if someone wants to check out your work, they can?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Dr. Cortney Warren, Cortney, Warren, Warren. My new book is Letting Go of Your Ex. You can get it on Amazon, on Audible, whatever's easy for you, on Kindle. And you are welcome to follow me on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn. I post informational videos related to mental health and well-being, and I have a focus in self-deception and in romantic relationships. And I welcome anyone to follow my work, and hopefully it is useful for you. My whole goal is to make it relatable and applied so that you can use it to help yourself in your own life.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Cortney. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope that we get to connect another time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.